I was at a lounge recently, and I was watching this guy who, on paper seemed to have everything going for him.
Okay.
He was the classic picture of success. Dressed in this suit that had to have cost a few grand, flashing a heavy watch, and clearly, picking up the tab for his whole group.
Viter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He had this look of comfortable confidence, the kind of look a man has when he's been told his whole life that if you get the degree, get the job, make the money, you win. He was playing that role perfectly, convinced he was the prize.
Right. But I'm guessing there's a but coming.
A huge but. Because then you look at the actual dynamic at the table, and, the reality was brutal. Just brutal.
Mm-hmm.
The women he was buying drinks for were barely making eye contact with him. Instead, their attention just kept drifting toward this other guy near the bar.
And what was his deal?
That's the thing. He was in a cheap T-shirt, but he had the height, the low body fat, and just this effortless physical presence that just screams, I am healthy.
Right. The genetic lottery winner.
Completely. And the rich guy in the suit, he was effectively invisible. A walking wallet, and that's it. He was laughing, but you could see the confusion in his eyes, wondering why his success wasn't translating into attraction.
Wow.
It was this perfect, painful illustration of the conflict between the comforting lies we're often told, that looks don't matter if you're successful, and the cold, hard math of the real world that a specific corner of the internet is now ruthlessly focused on.
Mm.
That guy in the booth, he probably thought he was a solid 8 out of 10 because of his resources. But if you applied the intense, quantifiable metrics that are currently just exploding from these niche forums into the mainstream, he was actually failing.
He was failing.
He was maxing out one stat while completely ignoring the metrics that actually determine your rank. And it made me realize that most men aren't losing because they're bad people. They're losing because they don't even know they're being graded on a curve they can't even see.
And that's the danger.
And that story, I think, frames our mission perfectly for this deep dive. We are looking at the structure of that cold, hard math. We're talking about these concepts of sexual market value, SMV, and the practices of looksmaxing.
Yeah.
This isn't just, anonymous forum gossip anymore. These ideas have broken containment. They've exploded from niche manosphere groups into mainstream youth culture, especially on a platform like TikTok, where the hashtag is pulling in billions of views. I find myself coming to this material just trying to understand why this quantification, this obsession with optimizing every facet of the human body has become such a compelling blueprint for young men today.
It's a compelling, but I think a really disturbing shift. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes this so important to analyze. What's fascinating here is just the sheer speed of that adoption and what it signals sociologically. You have these concepts of quantifiable value and optimization, which, they were originally associated with some of the internet's most isolated and, frankly, extremist manosphere groups.
The incel forums.
The incel forums, exactly. And now they're being analyzed by academics and openly discussed by high schoolers. It's an ideological signal flare.
It really is.
When teenagers are adopting the specific, often toxic lexicon, the rigid scoring system, and all the associated practices, it suggests a significant shift in male self-perception, in gender dynamics, and absolutely a severe mental health crisis that's just hiding in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
We really need to unpack this entire system because it's a blueprint for life being handed out online, and it's predicated on a profoundly cynical, transactional view of human interaction.
Okay, let's unpack the system then. For you listening who might be encountering this framework for the first time, let's start with that core theory. That man at the bar, he was being judged by a scoreboard he didn't even know existed. What exactly is sexual market value, or SMV, and how does it promise the shortcut to success?
Right. So the core idea, and you can trace it back to old pickup artist handbooks, but it's been super simplified for social media, is that attraction isn't subjective. It's not mystical. It's not based on personality alone.
Not some magical connection.
No, not at all. It's a quantifiable score. It's a number, often calculated out of 100 points, that determines your success in the dating world.
100 points.
100 points. And for people struggling in the modern dating landscape where, online apps kind of flatten human complexity, this quantification, it offers the ultimate path to self-improvement.
Because it's a clear path.
It's a clear, objective blueprint. It tells you exactly where to invest your time and energy. The mantra is basically, stop guessing, start calculating.
That mathematical approach is it's brutal in its rigidity. Let's talk about those 100 points. If you want to maximize your score, you have to know where the weight is applied. What are the 3 non-negotiable pillars used to calculate SMV?
Okay, so this system is rooted in what they frame as sexual economics, and it's weighted very, very heavily toward immediate visual signals. The first pillar, and it's the most critical one for achieving any success, is looks, or physical presence.
Looks.
And that accounts for a substantial 40 points.
40.
40. And this isn't just about being, good looking.
Right.
It's a really granular assessment. It includes fixed attributes like your height, but also modifiable traits like physique. You have to have a low body fat percentage, optimally below 15%.
Super specific.
Oh, incredibly specific. And they had very precise metrics of facial geometry. They use these hyper-specific terms like canthal tilt, which is the angle of your eye, or chin projection. This 40 points is the immediate non-verbal screen. It's the way the world filters you before you even open your mouth.
Wait, 40 points just for looks? That seems wildly high. I mean, especially when you think about resources, money, stability, future potential. Those are often considered the primary long-term drivers of successful pairings. Is this weighting just a form of, coping for people who only focus on their appearance? Or is there some kind of rationale within this framework?
It's a great question. And within the SMV framework, that 40-point foundation for looks is non-negotiable. It operates on the principle of filtering and signaling.
Okay, filtering and signaling.
Think about it. In the modern era of high-speed, high-volume dating like Tinder or Bumble, the initial signal is everything. Looks signal health, they signal genetic fitness, and self-discipline instantly. They serve as the barrier to entry.
So if you don't look the part,
The argument goes, if you don't pass that initial visual filter, you don't even get a chance to deploy your resources or your personality. It's a system designed for immediate first impression judgment.
that makes a cynical kind of sense in the digital marketplace. Okay, so if looks is the 40-point gatekeeper, what are the other two components?
The second pillar is resources. This covers income, career trajectory, social status, and that carries 35 points. This is where the man from your opening story thought he was maximizing his potential.
Right. His suit and his watch.
Exactly. It involves financial success and the ability to, mobilize social energy. And the third and final pillar is gain.
Gain.
That means confidence, charisma, social intelligence, and a supposed understanding of female nature. And that is weighted at the remaining 25 points.
Okay, let's apply that logic back to the man I saw at the lounge. The one who was spending a fortune but getting zero attention. The rich guy in the expensive suit. He was overweight, physically out of shape, and socially awkward. On resources, he's crushing it. Let's be generous. Give him 30 out of 35 points. Fantastic income, high status.
Sure.
But if he's overweight, say over 30% body fat, and he's generally lacking in those key facial geometry markers, his look score just plummets. We're looking at, maybe 10 out of 40 points on that metric?
At best. And his game, since he relies entirely on his wallet to facilitate social interactions and he's socially clumsy, it's effectively non-existent in this system.
Right.
You'd give him a generous 5 out of 25 points.
So his total SMV score lands at 45 out of 100.
Devastating.
That is devastating. It mathematically explains why his immense investment in one stat resources is rendered worthless. He failed the primary barrier to entry, the 40 points for looks.
Yep.
He's not the prize he thinks he is. In this framework, he's just a walking wallet. Or worse, a target who only attracts transactional interest, not genuine desire.
And that application really highlights the foundational and profoundly pessimistic ideology that's underpinning the whole structure.
Yeah.
In this framework, men are perceived as having no inherent value at all. They're initially positioned as the disposable sex, or waste product, who must earn their right to the dating pool.
You have to build yourself from zero.
From zero. Value is something that must be developed over time by cultivating these quantifiable attributes: success, confidence, charisma. This system is a complete categorical rejection of the idea that self-acceptance is sufficient, or that, personality alone can compensate for physical deficiencies.
The message is, if you don't actively build your value, you don't deserve the rewards.
That's the core message.
So when you look at that SMV calculation, the obvious place to invest is in that 40-point pillar, looks. The natural extension of this analysis is looksmaxing. The term itself is defined as a broad category of practices aimed at maximizing attractiveness, following that relentless ideology of optimization, where every facet of the human body is quantified and, theoretically, fixable.
It's the practical implementation of the whole SMV theory. If your SMV is low because of your looks score, you initiate a hyper-focused, goal-oriented regimen to increase those 40 points. And we see this commitment breaking down into two main approaches, categorized by the level of invasiveness, commitment, and cost.
Okay, let's start with the less extreme end for those just dipping their toes in the water. What does soft maxing entail?
Soft maxing covers all the non-surgical reversible improvements, but don't mistake non-surgical for low effort.
Right.
It requires intense daily commitment. This includes a rigorous diet and exercise regimen specifically designed to drop body fat down to that highly desirable 12 to 15% range.
Why that specific range?
Because low body fat is the key determinant for visible facial structure. It's all about the jawline, the cheekbones. It also involves meticulous skincare routines, optimizing wardrobe choices to enhance your shoulder-to-waist ratio, and specific non-invasive facial exercises.
And the one everyone hears about on social media now is mewing, right? Tongue posture exercises, aiming to force the tongue against the palate to enhance the jawline, creating that defined lower face structure.
Exactly. It's incredible how granular the details get. You're not just going to the gym. You are literally optimizing the placement of your tongue to subtly alter your bone structure over time.
It's a full-time job.
It is. Soft maxing is demanding, but the stakes and the costs rise exponentially when we move into the second category, hard maxing.
And this is where the obsession leads to the operating table.
Precisely. Hard maxing involves extreme, costly, and often painful cosmetic procedures. And we're not talking about simple nose jobs anymore. This includes things like chin and jaw implants, utilizing filler to reshape facial contours, shaving down facial bones to improve geometry, and even highly specialized and risky procedures to fix fixed attributes like height.
Okay, give us an example of just how intense that pursuit can get.
The most expensive and I think the most extreme procedure cited within these communities is leg lengthening surgery.
Oh.
This involves breaking the leg bones, inserting internal nails, and using an external fixator to gradually pull the bones apart, allowing new bone to grow in the gap.
That sounds agonizing.
It is. The process can add several inches of height, but it involves months of painful recovery. It requires intensive physical therapy and can cost upwards of $75,000. It demonstrates that for the dedicated hard maxer, there are no limits to the financial, physical, or psychological risks they are willing to take to ascend the SMV hierarchy.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because it shows how unattainable these quantified standards are, even when someone dedicates their entire life to the mission. Let's look at the example of Syrian Psycho. He's a prominent Looksmaxing figure, has 1.7 million followers on TikTok, and he's positioned himself as a success story, someone who has visibly optimized.
Right. He's the poster child, in a way.
You would think. Yet he was subjected to the same ruthless quantification that he promotes. In one detailed analysis by an anonymous creator who used all the standard Looksmaxing metrics, Syrian Psycho was still objectively rated.
And how did he do?
Despite having what the analysis called excellent jawline visibility and almond hunter green eyes, he only scored a 7.5 out of 10 facially.
Only a 7.5 after all that.
Only a 7.5. He was penalized for perceived flaws that most people wouldn't even register, like a slightly recessed lower jaw and a long mid-face.
My God.
He did everything right, and the system still papped him at 7.5. And the reaction to this, what did the comments say?
Oh, the comment section for that video was just flooded with young men saying that if a 7.5 is the ceiling for someone who looks like that, someone who has clearly invested surgical and temporal capital into optimizing his looks, then it's over for them.
It's over.
It's over. This illustrates the fundamental paradox. The system creates a blueprint for measurable improvement, but its standards are so genetically deterministic and rigid that it frequently leads to just deep hopelessness and self-rejection.
So the tool for improvement becomes a weapon for self-harm.
Exactly. The measurement itself, the quantification, quickly becomes a source of profound self-esteem damage, driving users either toward more extreme hard maxing measures or, as we'll discuss, these fatalistic ideologies. It's a transition from "I can fix this" to "I am fundamentally broken."
Right. And to understand that hopelessness, that language of quantification, we have to look at where this terminology really originated.
Yes, we do. The term Looksmaxing itself has a very specific and relatively recent lineage. You can trace its emergence back to around 2015 on anonymous forums like 4chan and specific corners of Reddit. This is where it was initially cultivated among incel and manosphere-adjacent groups, driven by this desperate desire to improve their social and romantic standing.
Okay, let's stop and define the community at the heart of this, because the term gets thrown around a lot. What is the precise definition of incel?
So incel is a portmanteau for involuntary celibate. Now, what's often missed is the original inclusive intent behind it.
Right. It wasn't always what it is today.
Not at all. The term was actually coined by a woman named Alana back in the 1990s, as a genuinely inclusive term. Her original project was intended for people of all genders who struggled with celibacy due to social awkwardness or mental illness.
But the term was hijacked, wasn't it?
Completely hijacked. Over time, that term was taken over and morphed into an extremist ideology associated predominantly with heterosexual men who define themselves as unable to find a romantic or sexual partner, but who respond with profound resentment, hostile sexism, and misogyny. They often blame women, feminism, and modern dating dynamics for their predicament.
And it is within these communities that we find the philosophical lens that structures their worldview, the black pill. This is a central concept, so let's dedicate some time to defining its fatalism. What does the black pill fundamentally propose?
The black pill is the truly pessimistic, nihilistic core of the ideology. It argues for what you could call turbocharged genetic determinism.
Turbocharged. I like that.
It is. The core tenet in it is that your genetics determine your romantic destiny. And for the conventionally unattractive, the hierarchy of attraction is absolutely immutable and inescapable. In this view, efforts like Looksmaxing are often futile or have a severely diminished return because your appearance is fixed at birth. It makes dating success a biological lottery that they believe they have already lost.
It sounds like a total rejection of the concept of self-improvement.
It is. It frames all other self-help advice as lies. They specifically reject the blue pill, which is defined as the societal comforting lies.
Like personality matters most, or there's someone for everyone.
Exactly. Or that looks don't count. They see that as a narrative constructed to keep the masses docile and compliant.
And what about the red pill? That's another term that gets thrown around a lot in the manosphere. How does the black pill relate to that?
The black pill also serves as a critique of the red pill. The red pill, which is often associated with pickup artists, suggests that improvement is possible, but only through developing game and understanding female nature through, often manipulative techniques.
So the red pill offers hope, in a way.
It offers a kind of hope, yes. But black pill adherents argue that the red pill is a lie sold by good-looking men who already had the genetic foundation to succeed. They believe that without that 40-point looks foundation, no amount of game or resources will ever work. They have accepted the harsh reality that they will never ascend the hierarchy primarily based on physical attraction.
So the black pill essentially says, the 40 points for looks is fixed, and if you didn't win the genetic lottery, you're destined to remain at the bottom. The game was rigged from the start.
Precisely. And this fatalism allows us to contextualize another piece of niche jargon that really encapsulates this despair. While mainstream media initially often describe these groups as predominantly white, studies have shown that the communities are actually quite ethnically diverse.
Okay.
But even within that diversity, there's a racial hierarchy at play based on perceived sexual capital.
Yeah.
Incels who are not white often blame their race for their celibacy, using the acronym JBW.
VBW?
Stands for Just Be White.
Wow, just be white. That is chillingly reductive.
It is. It's an expression of black pill fatalism regarding a perceived racial disadvantage in attracting partners within the dominant sexual field. They are internalizing data points on sexual capital, which often show that in the U.S., for instance, white men are perceived as having higher sexual capital than certain other groups.
So they see it as just another genetic factor they can't change.
Exactly. The use of JBW expresses the deeply held belief that their romantic destiny is not only determined by physical genetics, but also by racial demographics, a factor that is completely fixed and therefore hopeless to change. It is determinism layered on top of determinism.
It's clear that the organizing principle for SMV, Looksmaxing, and even the black pill's pessimism is this pervasive economic metaphor. Sexual sociality is conceptualized as a market, the sexual marketplace, or SMP. This framing treats human interaction not as an emotional exchange, but as a transaction of assets and liabilities.
This is so crucial because metaphors structure how we reason about intangible experiences and they guide our future action. If you think about sex as a transaction, you act transactionally.
Right.
And sociological studies analyzing PUA handbooks show how meticulously they define the economic roles and objectification required to operate in this market.
So if this is a market, what are the defined roles? Who are the commodities? And how is value calculated?
Both men and women are defined as commodity-producing commodities. However, their value curves diverge dramatically, which is essential to understanding the manosphere worldview. This is often visually represented by a set of bell curves.
Oh, I've seen that graphic, the one showing the two peaks, right? Women's peak sexual market value spiking really early late teens, early 20s, and then declining rapidly, while men's peak value builds later, often into their late 30s or early 40s.
Precisely. For men, the value proposition is structural. They start with no inherent value. They're often referred to as the disposable sex or waste product, and they must labor intensely through looksmaxing, income generation, developing game to become a high-value male, a proven commodity. Their worth has to be displayed or marketed.
And women, what's their role in this economy?
Conversely, women are seen to begin with inherent value. They're referred to metaphorically as gems, mineral metal, or wealth. That value, however, is considered highly perishable and degrades rapidly over time, measured almost exclusively by age and physical appearance.
The clock is always ticking.
Always. And their looks are often assessed rigidly, using the HP Hot Babe or Hot Body 10-point scale, where any deviation from the ideal signals depreciation of the asset.
That sets up a very instrumental definition of the interaction itself. If men are acquiring value and women possess a degrading commodity, how is the actual exchange defined in this marketplace?
The core exchange, which is sexual interaction, is treated instrumentally. It's a commodity or a dividend, rather than an end in itself. Pickup artist literature frames men as salespeople aiming for a close, which is either securing a number, a kiss, or sex.
So it's a sales funnel.
It's a literal sales funnel. Their entire approach, from the opening line to handling objections, is designed to anticipate and disarm any friction that prevents the sale.
So women are the consumers in this scenario, or the gatekeepers.
They are positioned as the buyers or the employers. They are the gatekeepers who pay with sex or attention. They are said to subject men to shit tests,
Which are like
essentially employment interviews. Tests to determine a man's confidence, his options, his ability to provide long-term security. The male goal is to reduce uncertainty by qualifying the woman and positioning himself as the selector, forcing her to qualify herself to him.
It's all about flipping the power dynamic.
Exactly. And furthermore, there is this massive cluster of economic metaphor that refers to women as property.
Property, that's strong language.
It is. Authors discuss stealing a taken girl or fighting for breeding rights. This underscores a worldview where men, and only men, have property rights over women. If a woman is in a relationship, the man is seen as the owner. This entirely financialized and objectified system dictates that if men invest time, money, and emotions into the interaction, the expected yield is the dividend.
And this brings us to the ultimate breakdown of the system. The math promises absolute clarity and success, but here's where that calculation runs headfirst into the messiness of human reality. We have the story of Marcus, a 28-year-old software engineer who bought into the system completely.
Marcus is the perfect case study in successful optimization, leading to relational failure. He took the blueprint seriously. He gym-maxed, dropping his body fat to 13%. He fixed his style with expensive tailoring, and he increased his income until he hit what the community deemed a high-value male status.
So he did the work.
He did all the work. By his own reckoning, he calculated his SMV at an impressive 8.5 out of 10. He successfully optimized his assets, achieving the goals set by the framework.
Okay, so he successfully raised his 40-point look score, his 35-point resources score, and now he was finally ready to cash in. Tell us about the date that broke the equation.
Marcus detailed his experience in his online field reports. He went on a date with a woman he rated as a 7. Throughout the dinner, he wasn't engaged in human connection at all.
What was he doing?
He was running a constant mental ledger, viewing the date purely as a transaction where he was the vendor displaying his highly polished product. He was tracking his expenditures, his time, his effort, his assets, and comparing them against her visible signs of enthusiasm and interest.
He wasn't seeing a person. He was viewing an accounting sheet.
Exactly. And when the conversation was polite, but not overly flirtatious, he began to feel acutely agitated. He had put in the currency, his optimized value, and was expecting a guaranteed yield, flattery, gratitude, and a clear path toward intimacy.
And he didn't get it.
When she offered a simple handshake and said she had a nice time, he felt cheated. He described a profound sense of market injustice, that he had invested his capital and the market refused to pay the promised dividend.
He ended the night angry at the market, not realizing his own error. He optimized his resume, but neglected the very thing required for human connection.
This is the fundamental tragic flaw of applying behavioral economics to romance. Marcus focused relentlessly on quantifiable assets and liabilities, calculating his worth and hers. But in doing so, he eliminated the possibility of intimacy, which is inherently emotional, messy, and non-quantifiable. His cold transactional calculation created a self-fulfilling prophecy. He maximizes value, but the way he wielded that value with an expectation of payment destroyed the genuine warmth required for connection. The market metaphor can structure the act of optimization, but it simultaneously undermines the very goal it purports to achieve.
So the system works perfectly for producing quantifiable assets, but those assets fail the ultimate test of human connection because they are wielded with this transactional coldness.
Precisely.
The concepts we've discussed, SMV, Looksmaxing, the black pill, they might have started in these anonymous forums, but they are now being deployed and amplified by the most sophisticated information distribution engine ever created, the social media algorithm.
Absolutely.
And this is how the ideology moves from niche extremism to mainstream youth pressure. Consider the experience of Ethan, a high school sophomore. His journey started innocently enough, just like any other teen, searching for how to get a sharper jawline on TikTok. He just wanted a few grooming tips.
And that innocent search was the entry point into a sophisticated algorithmic rabbit hole. The platform's recommendation engine, which is just ruthlessly designed to maximize engagement, quickly identified his insecurity regarding his facial structure. The content machine saw a profitable vulnerability, and within 48 hours, his For You page transitioned rapidly. It started with general, helpful grooming tips, then moved swiftly to severe, high-stakes Looksmaxing tutorials, complete with diagrams and technical jargon, and then seamlessly straight into the fatalistic black pill content.
It essentially confirmed his worst fears, feeding him content that engineered a mental health crisis for profit.
That's exactly what it did. The algorithm prioritizes sensational, high-emotion content, and few emotions are stronger or more addictive than hopelessness and inadequacy. It profits directly from monetizing insecurity, transforming his feed into a constant stream of creators analyzing faces, drawing red lines over eye shapes, contrasting prey eyes, which are round and weak, versus hunter eyes, which are almond-shaped and strong.
And it's just a constant reinforcement.
A constant reinforcement that if you lack specific genetic markers, it never began for you.
This is where the technical jargon hits home. They're talking about things most people never even thought about. For example, Ethan's mother noted this devastatingly specific change in him. He stopped smiling in photos because he was convinced his nasolabial folds were too deep.
Wow.
Wait, hold on. Nasolabial folds. We're talking about smile lines, right? The little creases around your mouth when you express happiness. That's what the algorithm focuses on.
That's the level of hyper-quantification we are dealing with. A teenager is convinced that showing emotion is a quantifiable defect. This shows how quickly the quantifiable metrics move from benign self-improvement to clinical body dysmorphia that's engineered by code.
It's a trap.
It's a total trap. The code identifies the insecurity, provides the technical language to describe it as a fatal flaw, and then provides sensational content that maximizes engagement. The user is trapped in a loop of self-assessment and self-rejection.
And this lexicon, this focus on quantifiable facial structure, has penetrated far deeper than just high school. It's trickling down into younger and younger demographics, showing how quickly the culture absorbs these assessments of inherent worth.
Yes, the specific practice of mewing, the tongue posture exercise, has become a meme and a specific physical gesture in elementary school classrooms.
In elementary school.
Elementary school, often accompanied by a shh symbol and a finger pointing to the jaw. Teachers are lamenting how pervasive and disrespectful the trend is, but what it truly shows is how deeply entrenched the focus on quantifiable facial beauty has become in youth culture, despite the constant official messaging about body positivity.
Yeah, that rings hollow.
It does. The parameters for desirable traits may have shifted. It's now about chin projection, not just clear skin, but the intensity of assessment has only drilled down further. When children are assessing their faces with the same ruthlessness that the algorithms use, the concept of accepting all bodies falls apart entirely.
Let's circle back to the language used by these communities because it really reinforces the transactional and dehumanizing view of the market. The language is a dialect designed to reduce people to their function or status within the dating hierarchy, making them easier to dismiss.
This specialized jargon is a key characteristic of the subculture, which relies heavily on depersonalization. Women, for example, are often referred to using these vulgar and dehumanizing terms like femoids or foids.
A portmanteau of female humanoids.
Exactly. And sexually active women are vulgarly referred to as roasties, based on a deeply offensive and anatomically false reference to supposed changes after sexual activity. The entire point of the jargon is to make objective measurement and dismissal easier.
And the high-value individuals, the ones who embody that 100-point ideal, they're also reduced to labels.
They're reduced to archetypes that determine who is entitled to the spoils of the market. Attractive, sexually active women are Stacys, and attractive, sexually active men are Chads. This categorization is necessary for the mechanical calculation of SMV and provides clear targets for the community's resentment.
This ideology doesn't exist in a vacuum. Where does the incel community sit within the broader digital landscape of male frustration?
The incel ideology sits firmly within the broader manosphere, which is this loose, interconnected collection of misogynist and anti-feminist movements online. This includes the Red Pill PUA community, men's rights activists, MRAs, and MGTOW men going their own way. And while they disagree on the solution, the Red Pill suggests improvement is possible, the Black Pill says it's not, they all share the fundamental worldview that gender relations are adversarial and women are manipulative or hypergamous consumers in the market.
And it is important to note the severe classifications this movement has earned. This moves it beyond mere online debate.
Absolutely. Organizations that are dedicated to tracking extremism take this very seriously. The Southern Poverty Law Center, the SPLC, explicitly classifies incels as part of the online male supremacist ecosystem, placing them on its list of hate groups.
It's a hate group.
It's classified as a hate group. The ideology is characterized by resentment, hostile sexism, anti-feminism, and, disturbingly, the endorsement of sexual and non-sexual violence against women and the sexually active. The Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism states that the incel community exhibits all of the hallmarks of an extremist ideology.
And this ideology has a terrifying real-world consequence that we have to underscore.
The violence is central to the identity for many adherents. Mass killers, particularly Elliot Rodger, who committed the 2014 Isla Vista killings, are glorified as incel heroes. They're frequently referenced in forums using the initials ER.
Going ER.
Members often refer to mass violence as going ER. Rodger left behind a 137-page manifesto detailing his involuntary celibacy and his desire for revenge against women. And he was an active member of communities like PUA Hate.
This is not just a historical problem confined to the mid-2010s. The ideology is proving to be transnational and highly adaptive.
That's right. We saw recent tragic violent events, such as the horrific 2024 double femicide in Turkey. The 19-year-old perpetrator was found to have been in contact with incel groups on Discord, where he consumed this ideology.
And the reaction.
Following the murders, the perpetrator received praise online within these communities, which led Turkish police to begin monitoring incel groups, and ultimately resulted in the blocking of Discord in Turkey. So the platforms may change, the specifics of the violence may shift, but the core ideological engine, that combination of deterministic hopelessness and violent resentment, remains alarmingly consistent.
So if we synthesize all of this complexity, Looksmaxing presents itself as a narrative of radical responsibility and measurable self-improvement.
Right. Stop coping, calculate your scores, start building.
That message is incredibly attractive because it offers a clear, objective blueprint for success in a world where dating feels confusing and arbitrary. But the deep dive has revealed that this entire framework is fundamentally built on a cynical, reductive, and often fatalistic view of human interaction. The Black Pill, which originated in extremist forums and views social life strictly through a market-based lens.
Yeah.
The drive for measurable, optimized value, the 40 points for looks, is now highly visible and amplified on mainstream social platforms like TikTok. This visibility creates immense pressure on young men, like Ethan, to quantify and surgically alter themselves, often being funneled by algorithms into content that monetizes their feelings of inadequacy and hopelessness.
Ultimately, what the deep dive has revealed is a world where social capital, specifically looks and charisma, is being aggressively financialized and sought after as a primary convertible asset. This approach, where value is meticulously calculated and success is determined by a mental ledger rather than genuine human connection, demonstrates a radical and potentially dangerous shift in how relationship success is perceived and pursued in contemporary society.
Right. That guy in the suit at the bar wasn't just losing a battle, he was fighting on the wrong map entirely, using a scorecard that the market had already rendered obsolete.
Exactly.
We've seen the consequences of this hyper-quantified approach to human worth.